Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad, or maybe good morning or afternoon, depending where you're joining us from. You're joining us for the live launch coverage of the Vega-C rocket launching from the French Guiana. This is the last mission of 2023 from the French Guiana, and a very exciting one for Arianespace, as it will be the first launch of the Vega-C in an operational capacity. But as always, as we get started, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. We'll see if we get that camera to focus maybe as well. Also, if you guys have questions at any point throughout today's stream, you can send us those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live over the course. Two countdowns on your screen right now. 15 minutes over on the side here. That is a live view of the launch pad as teams are preparing for the launch of ESA payload. But right above me, that is the countdown until actual liftoff. 29 minutes, 37 seconds, and counting until the opening of today's targeted launch window of the two payloads that are on board. But if it's your first time here, welcome here at the launch pad. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we're thrilled to have you here with us today. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage the like button. It helps us out, and possibly share out the stream. And if you're new, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, space briefing, space news update, or exclusive one-on-one interview. We're going to be going through everything we know about today's mission, some of the launch statistics, and then we'll be getting to your questions. So you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and then I will work on answering those as we await for Arianespace to begin their live coverage. We got lots of people tuning in from all over the world. It's great to have you here. We got Brian in North Texas, Ginger's in Washington, USA. We've got Ed in Arizona, Steven's in France. We got John on Earth. We got Brian in the Guiana. We got Timothy in Alabama, Suzanne in Bowie. It's great to have you all here with us today. Now, Arianespace is showing this live view on their stream at this time, and once their mission control actually patches in, we will, of course, listen in to them as we go through today's countdown sequence. But we'll run through everything we know about today's mission. On your screen is a look at live at the ELV-1 site in Kourou in the French Guiana, and on the pad is a Vega-C rocket. This will only be the second ever launch of a Vega-C rocket, but it will be the first operational flight of Vega-C. It will be the 22nd launch of any Vega rocket of any variant, and we are going for the 182nd launch attempt of 2022. Really amazing to see that number get up there. I don't think we're going to break that 200 this year, but there's still a hope that SpaceX can break that 60 number before the end of the year, so we're going to be keeping a close eye on that. Today's customer is Airbus Defence and Space for Intelligence, and the launch provider is Arianespace. It will be launching the satellites into a 643-kilometer circular orbit with initial drop-off at 628 kilometers. The second payload will be going up to 617 kilometers, also with initial separation at 628. The Vega-C rocket is not a reusable rocket, so it will crash down into the Atlantic Ocean once it has completed its mission. The two satellites on board today are the last batch in a series of next-generation imaging satellites that will generate very high-resolution images of Earth. The predecessors, NEO 3 and 4, were launched in April and August 2021. Airbus Defence and Space has funded, owned, and operated the entire program on its own, and the satellites have an imaging system that gives a 30-centimeter resolution from their location, and it is in a sun-synchronous orbit, which enables them to fly over an exact location twice per day, being able to give them constant updates on that local position. As we run into everything, we'll be answering some of your questions, so you can keep sending those in the chat by taking us at the launch pad. I know we'll be catching up on those here as we run through everything we know about today's mission. It's great to see lots of you tuning in. We got Australia in the chat. We got Will in Kentucky. We've got Golden in Florida. Aiden's in Manchester. John is on Earth. Great to see you. John in Rockingham, North Carolina. Great to have you all here today. Running through a little bit about today's timeline, we are expecting the end of mission with deployment occurring about 55 minutes post-launch. Launch is now targeting 1:47 a.m. UTC on December 21st, or looking at 8:47 p.m. Eastern Time on December 20th for those of us here in North America. Today's rocket, as we said, will be the first operational mission of the VegaC rocket, bringing on another rocket online for Arianespace, ahead of bringing on their Ariane 6 rocket, hopefully next year. They are currently building that rocket. It is getting stacked and preparing for its maiden flight. There will be 2 Ariane 6 configurations available that we'll expect to see the first variant launching hopefully next year. Vega has had one launch failure, and that was in 2019, and another in 2020. The anomaly that occurred in 2020 was found to be due to thermostructural failure on the forward dome of one of the motors. That mission was confirmed as a failure in December 2020 due to some cables being connected incorrectly in the upper stage. So in its history of coming online, it's still a rather new rocket, so there's always a chance of an anomaly, but of course we are hoping everything goes well here today. Vega sits alongside its siblings, which are the Ariane 5 and the medium lift Soyuz, and soon to be the Ariane 6 rocket as well. We will have a launch trajectory map. See a couple people asking about that. Once we actually have launch, Arianespace will show us a live trajectory, and we will pull that up on screen. In about 8 minutes, we should be getting the first updates from Mission Control here. They always go live early and show us a view of the pad, but with a nice big clock on top of it. So we always want to go live early and bring you those views of the pad as we go through the launch countdown here. But we are now just 23 minutes away from expected liftoff of the VegaC rocket. We're going to take a quick commentary break, and we will be back just ahead of launch, so stay with us right here on the launch pad as we count down to the first operational launch of VegaC and the last launch from French Guiana of 2022. Stay with us. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad. We are now just 15 minutes and counting until launch of the first ever operational VegaC launch and the last launch of 2022 from the French Guiana. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the launch pad, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we're going to be watching in as we count down to launch now under 15 minutes until that first operational launch. On the right side of the screen, up until a minute ago, was a live view of the pad where Arianespace is currently counting down to the opening of their window. And we're going to be listening in to mission control here in just a moment. If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll be answering those. Let's listen in.
I'm Emma Pies, and I'm delighted to be with you here today on Road to Space for the flight VV22, baptized Zoom In, because VegaC, the new European launcher, will take off for the second time with two exceptional satellites on board, designed by Airbus Defence and Space, Pléiades Neo 5 and 6. Together with Pléiades Neo 3 and 4, launched by Arianespace in 2021, they will form an Earth observation constellation providing very high-resolution images. As you know, this flight was postponed due to faulty equipment during the arming of the launcher. Well, for the moment, I can tell you all the lights on the monitoring panel are green, and VegaC should be takeoff as planned in about 15 minutes' time. And with me to provide a deeper insight into tonight's mission is David Iranzogreus.
Hello, Emma.
Good evening, David. You are the head of the Advanced Studies Department at Arianespace. And of course, Wendy Carrara, Senior Manager for Digital and European Institutions, representing Airbus.
Hello, Emma.
Good evening. Well, we are counting on both of you to tell us everything you know about tonight's two-star passengers and to help us understand all the issues at stake during this mission. So without further ado, let's head over to the Jupiter control room, where Stéphane Israel will currently in some seconds be coming up and talking to us about today's mission. Good evening, Stéphane, and welcome to Road to Space.
Good evening, Emma.
I trust all is well at the Guiana Space Center today.
Yes, so we are now a few minutes before liftoff, and all the parameters are green. The satellites are ready, the launcher is ready, the weather is with us, so we are now very, very close to the launch.
Well, that's great news. So tell us why the mission is called Zoom In.
Zoom in, first because of the satellites. We have here with Pléiades Neo 5 and 5, two Earth observation satellites, which are really the most advanced Earth observation satellite possible. They have a resolution of 30 centimeters. They can be tasked up to 15 minutes before the acquisition, and then they will send back their images in the hour after the acquisition. So very updated satellite. So this is the first reason. And the second reason is that this mission is the first commercial mission of VegaC operated by Arianespace. It will be the first mission towards the sun-synchronous orbit. So we are going to watch very carefully our launcher tonight.
And what else can you tell us about the launch tonight?
So liftoff will occur at 10:47. We will lift off towards the north. We will have during 7 minutes the initiation of the 3 solid stages. After they will have done their mission, we will have the initiation of the AVUM upper stage. We will have the first separation of Pléiades Neo 6 after 56 minutes at more than 600 kilometers. And after 144 minutes, we will have the separation of Pléiades Neo 5. And then after 1 hour and 52 minutes, we will have the deorbitation of the AVUM upper stage with the last AVUM initiation.
Well, thank you very much, Stéphane, and good luck with everything. We will, of course, come back to you at the end of this mission. David, Stéphane Israel has just highlighted for us the key moments of the VV22 flight. Could you give us perhaps a more detailed presentation of the different stages of the flight? We should be having some images coming up on the screen any minute now.
Yes, so VegaC will be taking off from the Guiana Space Center, heading towards the north. It will lift off thanks to the P120 stage, which is the new stage developed for VegaC and also for Ariane 6. It will last for a bit more than 2 minutes. After that, the stage will separate, and the new Z40 stage, also an improved stage, will ignite and will last for a few minutes, followed by the third stage, the Zefiro 9. During the flight of the Zefiro 9, the fairing will separate, a new enlarged fairing that has been developed for VegaC with increased capacity. The launcher will then continue with the first ignition of the AVUM, the fourth stage, which is also a new higher capacity stage. And then the launcher will go into a coasting phase, will go around the Earth, and will reignite close to Australia to the first orbit, where the Pléiades Neo 6 satellite will separate. After that, there will be a new coasting phase, an adjustment of the orbit, and then the second passenger tonight, the Pléiades 5 spacecraft, will separate. And following that, there will be a last ignition of the stage for deorbiting and clearing up the orbit.
Well, thank you, David. During the progression of tonight's flight, we will, of course, be listening attentively to each of the announcements given out by the DDO. In less than 5 minutes from now, he should be announcing the start of the synchronized sequence. While we wait for this, I'd like us to take a closer look at the new VegaC launcher. David, this new light launcher vehicle completed its inaugural flight on the 13th of July, but tonight it will make its first commercial flight. How important is this?
Yes, it's a very important flight for us at Arianespace after the maiden flight, which was performed by ESA and Avio to qualify the launcher. This will be the first commercial flight for a launcher that has already many commercial and institutional customers lined up for the next few years. So this is the start of a long series of flights.
Well, to get a deeper insight into these two latest satellites that make up the Pléiades Neo constellation, now let's take a look at the next report. What about Pléiades Neo 5 and 6?
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now counting down just 8 minutes until launch of the first operational mission of the VegaC rocket from ELV-1 in Kourou in the French Guiana. We're going to take some time to answer your questions, so you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad while Arianespace plays this video with some beautiful copyrighted music. We'll be answering your questions. On board today are Neo 5 and 6, which are the last batch in a series of next-generation imaging satellites that will generate very high-resolution images of the Earth with a 30-centimeter resolution. They'll be stationed in a sun-synchronous orbit, allowing them to pass over the same location twice every day, and they will be, as we said, the last in this new series. This series was built by Airbus, and Airbus has operated this entire program by themselves independently. This will only be the second ever launch of a VegaC rocket. Its first test flight was earlier this year. We saw a very successful launch. The Vega rocket itself has had 22 launches in its lifetime in different variations, with only a couple of failures in that time, but still a new rocket, so we're going to be keeping a close eye on how today's mission unfolds. This will be the 182nd mission of 2022, so it doesn't look like we're going to hit that 200 number this year, maybe next year, but there still is a chance that SpaceX can hit their goal of hitting 60 by the end of the year, as they do have a couple more launches coming up before New Year's. To give you an idea of what launches are coming up, don't forget you can always head on over to tlpnetwork.com/launches to check out our launch control with all of our upcoming Earth departures. We have a Starlink 5-1 pending for December 28th, as well as we have a customer payload on a SpaceX Falcon 9 pending also on December 28th. That would be their 59th and 60th launches, if I remember correctly. We also have Transporter 6 kicking off the new year on January 2nd, so it'll be exciting to see if SpaceX will be the one to close out 2022 and ring in the new year with the first launch. This year we saw the first launch occur on January 6th, and that was out of China. You can always follow along on Launch Control, and that's where you can get your detailed mission briefings about all of our upcoming missions as well. We'll drop the link in the chat for today. If you are an iPhone user, we do have our iOS app available. The link is in the description, or just search the Launchpad over on the App Store. See one question coming in. Will these images be used for Google Maps and Earth imagery? So they will be capturing Earth images down to that 30 centimeter resolution. We do not know if they'll ever directly patch into Google Earth or Google Maps, but it is something that down the road could, as it is working for a private company, for Airbus. They'll be using it themselves. They'll be using it for helping to monitor the effects of climate change and pollution, or to monitor emergency services response to things like hurricanes and things like that. They also say the satellites can have the option of being used in defense applications, such as monitoring opposing forces positions. So that is what they'll be using these satellites primarily for. We are now less than 5 minutes till launch. The board is still looking green, so we're going to listen back into Arianespace Mission Control as we go into the final count.
Legislation in this domain.
So, of
Wendy.
course, we abide by the French Space Operations Act, regulating authorizations and space licensing, as well as resolutions, for instance, of the United Nations. So with Pléiades Neo, we're actually getting closer to the needs of the military domain. Let's say that we complement existing military Earth observation capabilities. And to give you an idea of what we can see at 30 centimeters, we can see many objects such as cars, vessels, aircrafts, including specifics of their design to distinguish the different types of vehicles and count people even.
Well, all the lights on the board are green. Wendy and David, can you confirm that everything is going to schedule?
Yeah, so everything is according to plan. We just heard the DDO announce. Yes, he just announced the start of the synchronized sequence.
Well, that's brilliant news. So the DDO has just confirmed the start of this synchronized sequence. Perhaps, David, you can explain to us what this means and what is the next step before liftoff.
Yeah, so at this point, all the launcher systems are ready for the mission. There is only some last operations that are performed automatically on the launcher, and the teams are fully focused on checking that all the launcher parameters are correct.
And we'll be monitoring this green panel closely. But just before VegaC lifts off, I'd like us to take a look at some images of the previous launches of the Pléiades Neo satellites, and of course the inaugural flight of this new rocket, which took place on July 13th. We have some CGI images coming up, we have some images coming up on the screen right now. They will be coming up in a minute. They're, of course, before we go to that,
3 minutes.
obviously we have VegaC sitting there proudly. They're coming up in a minute, David, don't worry. There we go.
Yes, so this is the images from the previous Pléiades Neo flights. This is Pléiades Neo 3, assembled into the fairing, and then the fairing with a satellite on the launcher. And this was the first flight that took place in April of last year. And then these are the images of the second launch that took place a few months later. Here too, with the integration inside the fairing and the integration of the entire upper composite on the launcher. And this also took place last year. And here we have the first launch of VegaC, which took place
T-minus 2 minutes.
July. This was the integration of the launcher, here the integration of the payload inside the fairing, and then the assembly and the liftoff of this initial flight of VegaC. These are the images from the onboard camera, the separation of the fairing, and then the separation of the spacecraft in a middle Earth orbit.
Thank you, David. Well, we are now over a minute away before
T-minus 90 seconds.
evening sky. The DDO will, on the 1 minute marker, announce the final countdown. And then it is now our turn, David and Wendy, to sit back and enjoy the show.
T-minus 70 seconds.
Attention pour moins 1 minute. Top, H0 moins 1 minute.
T-minus 45 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds until the inaugural commercial flight of VegaC. T-minus 20 seconds.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage P120, décollage. La propulsion est nominale, le pilotage est calme.
And VegaC has launched on its first operational mission from the French Guiana, the last launch of 2022
Pilotage est
from
calme,
the French Guiana.
la trajectoire est nominale.
40 seconds into flight.
Acquisition de la télémesure par la station de Saint-Jean. Paramètres bord sont nominaux.
T plus 60
How
seconds into flight.
fantastic to see VegaC roaring across that equatorial sky. Yet again, one can't take one's eyes off her. It's so impressive, like a boil of light rumbling across the jungle. This is, of course, the second launch of VegaC, Europe's new launcher, and it has just successfully completed liftoff with Pléiades Neo 5 and 6 on board. These two satellites, designed by Airbus Defence and Space, are the 119th and 120th to lift off on a Vega launcher. And we will, of course, be following the different stages of this flight very closely. David, I turn to you. What are the main stages of the flight we should be looking out for in the next few minutes?
So in a little less than 1 minute, the P130 first stage will have finished its job, and it will separate from the launcher. And then the second, this is the second flight of this P120 stage, following the maiden flight, and it will also be used on Arianespace later on.
Début de queue de poussée
Well,
du P120.
Before the announcement of the separation of the P120, just one word, sur this, a reaction. Wendy,
It's always amazing.
David,
Yes.
a word.
Yes, it's always incredible to see the liftoff.
There we go. So now we have
Yes, and
Séparation du P120 et allumage du Zéphiro 40.
There we have it, the separation of the P120, which we see very clearly. We've seen it, saw it very clearly. Well, the DDO has just confirmed this separation of the first stage. So if I've understood correctly, the P120, David, is just one of the new features of this new launcher, am I right?
yes, so besides this first stage, the second and the fourth stages, so the Zefiro 40 and the Avum, have also been improved,
Pilotage est nominal.
increasing their propellant capacity and therefore the overall launcher performance. And also, very important, the fairing volume has been increased, allowing the launcher to accommodate larger satellites.
Well, VegaC is starting to lighten its weight and separate from its first stage, the P120. What is the next step for the European launcher?
So in a few seconds, the Zefiro 40 stage will have finished also its job, and it will also separate from the launcher. And the third stage, the Set-9, will ignite and continue the mission.
Wendy, turning to you, you explained to us earlier the incredible hard work that Airbus Defence and Space teams have put into getting Pléiades Neo 5 and 6 airborne today and en route to their destination. But it's tonight that everything starts for them, isn't it?
Yes, you're entirely right. It's a relay between the teams involved in developing the satellite and those who will be operating the constellation. And first things first, in the next minutes and hours, we'll assess that both satellites are fully operational. This means checking telemetry, checking the successful deployment of the solar panels, and so on. It's an in-depth check to make sure everything is nominal. Once that's done, we'll turn on the camera, which was one of the most fragile instruments.
we see that there's a problem with the trajectory. David, can you tell us?
Yes. So there seems to be an issue with the launcher, yes. We stand by to get more information.
We have had an anomaly in flight.
So could you tell us exactly? We can see on the graph in front of us, we can see that the trajectory, it seems to be going, maybe, is it going off course? Can you tell me? No.
Yes, indeed, the altitude, it seems to be lower than expected.
So the altitude, we're at 107 kilometers. Have you got any news from us from Kourou in your earpiece?
No, not for the time being.
So, in this type of situation, how would you interpret this? What might have happened? What could happen?
Okay, for the time being, we're waiting to get more precise information on.
Sorry, David, you were saying you're still waiting for news in your earpieces.
So I'm going to interrupt here because they're obviously still monitoring what is happening at this time. But we have had an anomaly with the maiden and commercial launch of the VegaC rocket. On the bottom of your screen, just to the side of me, you can see that yellow line arching down. That happened right following that first stage separation, going into the second stage, and you can now see the payload is beginning to fall back down to Earth. We've now seen fairing separation and that third stage separate as well, but unfortunately an anomaly on the VegaC on its first flight, and it is very sad that we are going to watch a CGI animation of most likely losing this payload, as this payload will not be able to be recovered and will crash in. We're going to listen into what we can here, but at this time it is coming back towards the ocean.
David, we're still waiting for news from you. I don't think you have anything to give us yet.
No, we do not have.
Well, all I can say is that if we do have to go off the air, we will, of course, be giving you an update on all our social networks, and we will be keeping you updated with what's happening.
You can see they're zooming in on the director of operations, waiting for a possible update. You can see the payload has been separated there. Obviously not much known at this time, but looks like there with that telemetry we have had splashdown of Pléiades Neo 5 and 6. Let's listen
pour une
in.
mise en configuration d'arrêt de la base de lancement.
What does that mean, David? What has the DDO just announced to us?
Yeah, so the DDO announced that there was indeed an issue with the launcher, and so everybody's standing by on the launch base to see what the exact situation is. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they certainly look very, very focused.
We're going to keep listening into the raw comms here.
What can you tell us?
I do have to say, very amazing that they are staying live. We're still looking at live views of mission control. 8 minutes after liftoff, but VegaC has failed and the payload has been lost.
For the time being, without additional information, but what we saw is that, yes, during the flight of the second stage, there seemed to be an issue with this stage.
Well, we might have to shut down our live sequence in a minute, but we're still waiting. We're still waiting news. We're still very hopeful, and we hope that the problem is going to be resolved. So can you describe to us, perhaps, David, we're going to perhaps try and get Stefan back, and get him wired up, and then maybe he can explain to us what is the problem. Maybe, David, you could just explain to us what we're seeing up on the screen. Where are we here exactly? So
Yeah,
this
so
is the
this is the Jupiter room. So obviously, people are waiting to get more information on the issue. And yes, indeed, we will have some.
because all these people who are here, they're all the VIPs. They're every lot of representatives from all the different
Yes,
groups.
behind the glass panels. Yes, they're the
That's what we call the fishbowl.
yes. Inside there are the people following the launch and all the authorities of the launch. Outside is the public and guests that are invited for the launch. Yes.
Well, we are still waiting for some news of the launcher, which has had a slight problem, but we will be. We're hopefully going to get some news on that shortly. I've just heard. Well, I've just heard, yes, that on Road to Space, that Stefan Israel is now going to come back and talk to us again and explain to us the problem. Yes.
So after the liftoff and the nominal ignition of the P120C, which is the first stage of the Vega, and under pressure has been observed on the Zefiro 40, which is the second stage of the Vega. And after this under pressure, we have observed the deviation of the trajectory and a very strong anomaly. So unfortunately, we can say that the mission is lost. And I want to deeply apologize towards our customer, Pléiades Neo and Airbus Defence and Space, for this failure tonight. And we will now have to work with all our partners to better understand why the Zefiro 40 has not worked properly tonight, triggering the failure of the mission. So we are going now immediately with all the teams, with our prime avio and all the partners to study what has happened tonight. And I really apologize for this anomaly.
Thank you, Stefan. Well,
Thank you very much.
Well, now, thank you, Stefan, for those words. Well, now we know what the problem is. We are now going to leave you, and we will you will have all the information.
And there we had an update from Stefan. I'm just going to pause this here before we lose their feed here. This is a live view into what they call the fishbowl, where the launch team is. But there you had it confirmed, a launch anomaly with the second stage of the first operational mission of the Vega-C rocket. Unfortunately, the payload has been lost. We were been reviewing the telemetry for what we have seen, and I have to say right off the bat, kudos to Arianespace. They did not just hit the end stream button. They stayed live. They showed live telemetry all the way until the telemetry all went to zero and was grayed out. You could see very clearly at one point that they have lost they knew they had lost control, and they ordered the rocket to basically dive, helping bring it down in a safe corridor. We were keeping a close eye on that, but not obviously the hope of the last launch out of French Guiana of 2022 or the first operational mission of Vega-C. This will nonetheless trigger, obviously, an investigation into the Vega-C rocket and what has occurred. The error seemed to occur during the second stage of the mission. Shortly after that first stage burnt out and we had separation, second stage, that is where we started to see the telemetry have an issue. But at this time, obviously, not much more is known. This has only just occurred now about 13 minutes ago, but the payloads have been confirmed lost. And quite a thing there for the host down in the bullpen to actually publicly apologize to the customer. Quite a thing to see that. So I have to give it to Arianespace. They have handled this as well as they could on their webcast, and just being clear and showing that live telemetry all the way to the end. So we really do have to give it to them. But an issue did occur during the second stage of flight, and the Vega-C, along with its payloads, were lost into the ocean, is where we have confirmed the splashdown should have occurred. At this time, it was going into basically a straight north trajectory towards the very far eastern coast of Canada, and it would have splashed down basically in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, probably looking at telemetry, kind of around the Florida, or just a bit south of Florida, but way over into the middle of the ocean. Obviously, there will be more information that comes out over the coming weeks and months as this investigation gets underway into VegaC on what their next steps will be, and then we will have a return to flight eventually of the VegaC rocket, and then it'll be unknown if there will be a customer on board at that time, or if they'll be required to do another test flight of this rocket, as they've only done the one previous of this variation of the Vega rocket. But with that, there's not much more to say, so I think we're going to wrap it up here today. If it was your first time here, though, welcome here at the Launchpad. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And this is not normally our coverage, but space is not easy, and failures unfortunately do happen, and that is what has happened here today. If you do enjoy space, make sure you engage that subscribe button so you don't miss other live launch coverage, space briefings, space news updates, or our new shows rolling out in 2023. If I do not see you again until Christmas, from the entire TLP crew, I want to wish you and your family a healthy and a Merry Christmas. And if we don't see you before the end of the new year, we wish you all the best and an absolutely fantastic 2023 ahead. We do have a couple more launches coming up. SpaceX is going to try to get 2 more Falcon 9s into space before the end of the year and try to hit that record of 60 launches in 1 year. So we hope you'll see us. We'll hope you'll see you then. But for now, this is Zach from TLP Network's main studio signing off. We'll see you next time. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.